There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
So I would like to welcome to Bite Size Book Chats. My first time meeting she's not old, but I mean a long-time Litsy colleague of mine, if I can use the word colleague in the Litzian context, Soubhi from Austin, Texas. Soubhi, wow, my dog likes you. Soubhi from Austin, Texas, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It's so great to finally meet you. And your handle on Litsy is Soubhiville. Am I pronouncing it correct? I think so.
Yes.
Soubhiville. You're very active on Litsy, so everyone should go check her out there. What a fabulous bookshelf we have behind you. Are those all your books?
They sure are.
Uh-huh. And we're here to talk about a 2020 novel that got a lot of buzz when it came out. How Much of These Hills is Gold by C. Pam Zhang. It was longlisted for the Booker that year, and I believe it's a historical novel. And there it is, and you loved it.
I did love it. It's a strange book to say that you love it when I'm sure you've read many that have a very melancholy feel throughout, and that makes you feel strange for saying that you love it, but sometimes I do really love stories like that. So it definitely has that dark feeling, but it also is very beautiful.
I have the same taste in books that you do. Tell us about the opening premise.
At the beginning of the book, there are two children, Sam and Lucy, and they're very young, I believe 6 and 11, and their father has just died. This is in the time in the Western US of the gold rush, and their father was a prospector and was their only parent at the time, and they want to figure out how to bury him. And their parents were Chinese immigrants and have some traditions based on that. So it's not like they can just bury him right outside. They have kind of some cultural things that they feel like they need to do in order to bury him. So that's at the beginning of the book.
Who are the main characters?
Lucy is the main character whose point of view that you have through most of the book. She's the older sibling. And then her younger sibling, Sam, I think is 3 or 4 years younger. And as it starts, they're very small children, and you see some of them growing up, and also the story goes back in time, so you see some of what happened before the book starts. But Lucy is the main character whose point of view that you have through most of the book.
Okay. And just because Sam can sometimes be female name, is it a man or a woman?
Sam is identifying as male, but was born female.
How interesting. So this is a queer
so
novel, isn't it?
Yes and no, because
yes and no.
Well, I would say yes. It's mostly from the point of view of children, so that doesn't really matter very much. But yes, Sam is identifying as male, was born Samantha, but goes by Sam.
Well, that was a loaded question I asked, and I didn't think it was going to be a loaded question.
I know, right? Yeah.
Why did you love this book so much?
I love books that bring you cultures that you may not be used to. And I also like historical fiction that gives you a different point of view than the historical fiction of white male America. So this was really interesting because the mother was an immigrant, and you see her journey a little bit from coming right off a boat. And their father actually was born in the United States, but was treated as an immigrant because his looks were different. So no one accepted that he was American, even though he was born and brought up in America. So that was an interesting twist on the gold rush kind of story. And I really liked the point of view of the children and how different the story was from the point of view of children than it might have been had you seen it from the point of view of adults more.
And I sometimes struggle with child narrators or children's point of views because it's either done wonderfully well or absolutely awfully. So this was it worked for you.
It worked very well for me, yes.
And the tone, it sounds like a fairly serious tone.
It is mostly very serious, but I think because it's from the point of view of children, there is a bit of hope that might not have been there from the point of view of adults. But it is definitely mostly on the heavier side. I wouldn't go into this book unless you are prepared for it to be on the heavier side. It's very atmospheric. You very much feel like you've stepped into this time and this place of deserty, southwestern, maybe, it never exactly names where they are, but maybe Colorado, maybe Arizona. It makes your skin feel dry, like you really feel like you're there very much.
Vivid.
Yes. And also there's a little bit of an element that you don't know if it's magical realism or fantasy, but it doesn't matter one way or another because it's children. And you know how an imagination in a child, sometimes you can't tell what's real and what isn't. So that's really cool too. Certainly trigger warnings.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're sensitive to that, look those up before you start it.
Soubhi, this is great. I'm looking forward to trying it. Do you know anything about the audio version? I assume there's an audiobook version of this, and I wonder if...
I did not listen to the audio. I do love audiobooks, but I didn't listen to this one.
Yeah, I might check that out. Soubhi, I hope you'll come back.
I definitely will. Thank you so much for asking me.
How exciting to have Ange of the fabulous BookTube channel, Ange's Book Chatter, with us today, all the way from Sunderland in the northeast of England. Ange, welcome.
Hello, Sean. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
How nice to have you here and to finally meet you. We are probably the winos of BookTube, are we not?
I think Scott and Ella gave us that description.
And tell us about your channel. What kind of stuff you like to read, or what kind of things you do on your channel?
I really use my channel to document what I'm reading, what books I'm interested in, and just my love of books in general. And I'll try any genre really, and be part of the bookish discussion as well. Because
you read a wide variety of stuff, and you also do a lot of BookTube readathons and things like that. So your last video, I got dizzy with all the BookTube projects and readathons and whatnot you were participating in. So you are a real team player and a community builder.
Yeah, I think this is once you meet your community, isn't it? Your friends, and you just definitely suffer from FOMO. I don't like missing out when something's going on.
That's right. So Ange has a wonderful channel and a wonderful, understated, but really quite fabulous sense of humor. So her channel is woefully undersubscribed. So I really wanted to have Ange come on today to get you all to go check out her channel because it's fabulous. Ange is here also because she read a book that sounds pretty darn interesting, The Anomaly by Hervé Tellier, translated from the French by Adriana Hunter. It sounds quite wild. And tell us about it.
The book is about a cast of passengers who take a flight from Paris into New York into JFK. So you don't meet all the passengers, you meet several of the passengers and just follow their story a little bit before the flight, but then after the flight lands and you follow them for a few months, and then all of a sudden in JFK, the air traffic control get another message that the same captain wants to land the same plane with the same list of passengers. So then you follow what happens from there and how this affects characters on their life journey and how it changes them.
And it's maybe a spoiler to say anything more about why the plane has to make is it an emergency landing?
No, it's just a normal landing. It has come through some weather on its flight across the Atlantic, but then it is just this reason why there's now 2 flights with exactly the same passengers on both flights.
Okay, no, I thought that's what you said, and I thought, oh, maybe Anne just started drinking wine early. Is that true? So, are we talking sci-fi here, or something like they've been duplicated, or what?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, and the way that it's wrote, it does switch between different genres. So you have the literary fiction and the emotional storyline around one of the characters. You also have more of a thrillery based storyline going on with a character. So it does change genre, and there is a bit of sci-fi in there because, of course, they have to get the scientists involved to find out how has this happened. And it does have a lot of pop culture in there. So, of course, they have to bring the President of the United States in there and explain to him how this has happened. The FBI is involved, what it would do with this extra plane full of passengers. And then as the news breaks and the government decide to tell their version of what's going on, of course, some of these passengers become celebrities. And so it's following their journey and how it changes them as people and individuals, and how it changes the world, really.
So let me see if I got this straight. One plane takes off, but two planes land with the same exact passengers. So some kind of a duplication of all the passengers.
Yeah,
so
3 months apart. So the some of the
3 months apart. Okay.
Yeah, so some of the passengers have led a further 3 months of their life, which has had significant life events happen. And one of the passengers is an author who's wrote a book. So
this does not sound like a Sean book, and I'm absolutely fascinated by what you're telling me here. So and again, if this is spoiler territory, just tell me, but do the characters that are duplicates of one another, do they meet?
Yes, they do, and I don't think that will be a spoiler when we follow some of the characters. They do meet, and it deals with sort of how not just they deal with that, but also how their family deals with that, and their community deal with that, and how some of them do become celebrity because of that. But then what it also brings out is more of the religious and political aspects, and how the world tries to understand this from a faith perspective, and also from a scientific perspective of how this has gone on. But the parts that I really enjoyed was more about as individuals, and how you can have the characters and they're both the same character and biologically the same, but one's lived 3 months more, and so they have different views now of the world and coming together, and how their families also deal with it, because which is their real partner or family member.
So there was an intellectual component to it that was interesting, and kind of a thrillery thing that was intriguing. And those things are not usually my bag, but in this case sounds pretty darn interesting. But you also got very emotionally invested in the characters.
Yes, I am a very emotional reader.
Me too.
So there was a particular storyline that really resonated with me around a family as well, because one of the life events that happens then completely changes the duplicate then completely changes their life again, and how I don't want to give too many spoilers, but how they have to deal with that emotionally. And I found that very sensitive as well. So it did have that emotional component. I think that's one of the things I enjoyed about this book. Some of it was page turnery. You wanted to know what was happening next to character, and then you were into the next chapter, you were pulled into a very emotional situation and trying to understand that. And by the time you get to the end, you're sort of really questioning yourself as a person. And that's what I like about books. I like to read a book that challenges my worldview and me. And it did do that. It really challenged when you can think, what would have I done? I think that's a good scope for a book. And the fact that I want to go back and reread it and try and pick up some of these things that were multi-layered, that during the first read, I may not have picked up on when I was reading more at pace around some of the more thrillery science fiction aspects of it, to go back and really read those again and reflect on those a bit more, which is a sign of a good book for me.
And thanks so much for telling us about the book.
Thank you.
Lara from Newfoundland is back, and this is the first time I'm chatting to her now that I'm back in Canada. Lara, hello.
Hi, welcome back to Canada.
Thank you. We're a long way apart, but you say you've never been to Saskatchewan, and I've never been to Newfoundland, and I would love to go to Newfoundland. So someday.
Look me up when you do.
I absolutely will. We'll make a video together. How's that?
Sure.
We are here to talk about a book that is far from Canada. This is a nonfiction book, and one of the first questions I'm going to ask Lara is how she would categorize this book generically. Is it a memoir or what? But it is by the famous British writer Daphne du Maurier, with photographs from her son, Christian Browning, called Vanishing Cornwall, The Spirit and History of Cornwall. And when I saw that Lara had recently read it, I nabbed her to talk about it and tell us all about it.
Well, I've been a Daphne du Maurier fan for a while. I first read Rebecca maybe 12 years ago. Daphne has a bit of a special place in my heart because the very first buddy read I ever did, once I learned about the online sort of bookish community, was a Daphne du Maurier novel. And the people who I did it with, I read 2 more Daphne du Maurier novels with. So by then I was, a pretty hardcore fan. My very favorite is Jamaica Inn. And what I love about it is the Cornish setting and the landscape and the very strong sense of place, the moors and the tours and the smugglers in that, historical period. And the Jamaica Inn itself, and the coastline, and the mad vicar, and all that good stuff really grabs me. And Daphne's descriptions of the landscape and the seascape, and the way she sets the place, the atmosphere, that hook, line, and sinker, I was there. So knowing that Daphne had such a strong appreciation for Cornwall, having spent a lot of her adult life there and part of her childhood for sure. A woman called, her Twitter handle is Heaven Alley, and she's also on Instagram. I think she shares a birthday with Daphne du Maurier. And so in May every year, she has a Daphne du Maurier reading week. So I ordered Vanishing Cornwall through my interlibrary loans of my public library system, just in time for that. And very happy I did. You asked what genre it was? It is, I would say, mostly memoir. It's a lot about Daphne's memory of going to Cornwall for the first time with her mother and her family and staff in tow, because she had quite a privileged upbringing, I think, in some ways. And it's also sort of a little bit of intermixed with the memoir aspect is like legends and stories and history. My sort of main gig is heritage preservation. And so over the years, I've read a lot of community history. And it's always interesting to me, but not always well written. And Daphne du Maurier can write. The woman could write. So, this was, I think we would have been great friends.
I have many questions. The first one that I can think of is, does she address, for example, you said what was the name of the novel that your favorite? Jamaica Inn.
Jamaica Inn.
In this book, does she delve into or talk about setting novels in certain places and kind of address that? I based the story set here, but I changed this or I changed that. Anything like that in this book? She
doesn't like always come out and say it, but you can see in the things that she said, the kinds of things that she appreciated. Like she tells a story about a vicar, and she talks about how the isolation of Cornwall could be tricky on a vicar's mental health, shall we say. And,
Okay.
and you could see when she talks about that and tells this actual story about an interaction she had with a vicar. You can see how that informed the vicar's character in Jamaica Inn.
Okay.
And she tells another story where she and a friend got lost on the moors on horseback. And they didn't know, where to go. I think it was foggy. And they lost their bearings. And finally, they decided just to let the horses take them, put faith in the animals, that the animals knew where to go. And the animals took them to Jamaica Inn. And so Jamaica Inn is real, in case you didn't know. I didn't know until after I researched the novel. And there's actually a picture of it in here. So that would be her son's, her son's picture of Jamaica Inn. Yeah.
Okay.
So bucket list, I had to take a trip to Jamaica Inn one day.
Well, that was going to be my last question. Have you been to Cornwall? So not yet.
I've not been to Cornwall. I've been there quite a number of times in books and in TV series and in movies. People who appreciate the Poldark series, I think, would appreciate this book as well. There's a history of mining in Cornwall and the industry in Cornwall mixed into Daphne's memoirs and her sort of ruminations about the people and the character of Cornwall and its people. So, and you'll recognize a lot of the names like Trelawney, and if you watch Poldark or read Poldark, you get a lot of the place name flavor and the surname flavor through Daphne's memoirs.
All right. And we should say that this book was originally published in the UK in 1967. So I don't know when du Maurier died, but it wasn't that recently, 1980s?
No, I think so. The first edition, her son took photos for, but it was published in black and white. And the one that I read is from, she wrote an epilogue for it in 1979, but it wasn't actually published until 1981. And this one has her son's photos in color, which is, I think, a nice addition. Her epilogue is a nice addition because she's able to look back at what she already thought of as Vanishing Cornwall in 1967 or so, and then think about what's changed since then. And she's talking about the tourism industry being a backbone in Cornwall now and how that sort of impacts the character of a place.
My last question is, what did you get? What kind of a picture or what additional insight did you get into Daphne du Maurier, the person?
She opens this book with a really weird story where she's out with one of the staff, not in Cornwall yet, somewhere, wherever else they're living in England at that point. And they come across a snake, and the staff guy, he might have been the gardener, nailed the snake to a tree. And for whatever reason, I guess some sort of folk belief kind of thing, you had to leave the snake there and just let it die, nailed to a tree. And on the same day, Daphne goes home and lets out birds that have been in a cage that she was given as a gift because she didn't really like them. So she pretended that they got away when in fact she just let them go. And so you get this, it was just this really strange mix of things for a young kid to be doing in the run of a day. So it kind of got
this was when she was a younger person.
Yeah, when she was just a just a girl. Okay. And yeah, so she's in one day she watches a snake nailed to a tree and then goes home and accidentally and lets these birds out. And then she goes on to talk about how her family went to Cornwall and how she came to love it and that kind of thing. So I got the sense of her being somebody who wouldn't shy away from unsympathetic observations of her own character, or if she did something, I guess, a bit untoward, she would own up to it. But also somebody who was really passionate about the place that she ended up sort of loving and calling home.
Lara, thank you so much.
Thank you.
My mother and I are absolutely delighted that Alba from Puerto Rico is coming back for her second appearance. I have had to really, really coax her. I'm so glad that it finally, what I had to say to her was, my mom really wants you to come back on, because, and that's very true. I was not exaggerating. So Alba, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Sean. And I want to send a special greeting to your mom and a kiss. Mwah.
Very nice. Someday, maybe I will arrange a Zoom chat between the two of you talking books or something. That may be fun.
That would be lovely.
We are here to talk about a book that is right up Alba's alley, and a book that sounds very interesting to me. This is a work of graphic history, like it's a graphic nonfiction book about, I pronounce it, Che Guevara. Alba will tutor us on how it's really pronounced, by Spain Rodriguez. Please tell us about this book, Alba.
Okay, so first I want to tell you the backstory of this book, my project. I first read, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it because I'm not at home right now, but Britta Bowler showed a graphic biography of Rose Luxemburg.
I remember.
Red Rosa by Kate Evans, right? And I got FOMO immediately, and I ordered it, and I read it, and I loved it. Later on, I saw Jen from Remembered Reads, who also reviewed Red Rosa, and she brought up very interesting issues after she read the book. Now, Jen is constantly reading graphic books of all kinds. And so, yeah, and that even got me more interested in reading graphic books of all kinds. Now, the thing is that has been huge in Latin America for a long time, and in Puerto Rico also. We've had, for example, Rius, which is a very famous illustrator and writer of nonfiction things. And then there's Mafalda also. So Jen recommended reading, if you wanted to get into the graphic novels and the graphic biographies, to read Understanding Comics. So that's what I did. And this, I don't know, Sean, but one of the things that lifts my spirits up when I'm feeling down, whatever situation that's going on, is a book that really challenges you. And I did not expect this one to challenge me as much and to be as gripping and as interesting and as educational as this book was. Loved it. So then I started, hauling different graphic books. And this is one of the first ones that I read and absolutely loved it. Loved it. And it's a very down-to-earth and realistic look at Che Guevara from when he was, very young to his death, and how his death later became martyrdom, for all Latin America. And
I understand that the author did a lot of original research.
Yes, he did. And it shows in the writing, but the graphic art is also just fantastic. The facial expressions, for example, here they're talking about pornography and the shocked look on the person's face who is talking about pornography. I really, really commend the work that was done on this comic. It's a good introduction to Che Guevara. And then after Che, I read the biography of, I don't know if you can see it,
Yes.
Eugene B. Debs, who I absolutely love. This one I read the biography already long ago. And this was also very well done. This is done, graphic biography, art by Noah Van Sciver, and the script by Paul Buhle, who did the afterword to Che Guevara. So yeah, I'm on a kick.
You
Sean.
are.
I'm on
That's fantastic.
I'm on a graphic kick.
Do you know my friend Lindy? Her channel is Lindy's Magpie Reads.
Yes,
She is
I know. Yes, I've noticed that she is shepherding. She is tutoring Roz.
That's right.
I've been doing a lot around about the books in her quest through the graphics. Yeah, and I find it fascinating.
It's only about 100 pages, so it must do a good job of kind of being telling this very complex story in a way that it's contained in such a short book.
It was a very good read, and it's a good introduction to Che Guevara if you want to learn why he's on so many T-shirts and on so many mugs and so many posters, and you don't know why. Yeah, this is a good introduction.
That's awesome. So I have one last question for you, Alba. How many copies did you accidentally buy of this book?
Don't go there, Sean. I found more multiple copies these last few days that I didn't know existed. But this one is only one. But
only
you know
one,
what?
okay. I'm not going to take the time to explain why I posed that joking question to Alba. What I'm going to do is to link to Alba's video about this, which is one of the most delightful BookTube videos I've ever seen. And I should mention, I didn't at the beginning, that Alba used to have a BookTube channel. Are you thinking that you might come back at some point, Alba?
I don't know, Sean. I've realized that, first of all, I've been trying to learn how to edit on iMovie. And after doing it on the Android for so long, it's my brain just doesn't compute. So I don't know, but I do have some things, some ideas, and I might come back.
Well, in the meantime, anytime I need an Alba fix, I go and watch this video where Alba talks about multiple copies of books. I'm not going to say any more. Just go look at the video. It's priceless. And standing invitation, Alba, to come back on my channel any old time.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you for being so original and for being so unique. And I love everything you do. Your content is fantastic. Love you. Bye.